everybody, welcome back to a new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ Podcast. This is a very special episode with two very special people because we're talking about another very special person who we're building one very special car for, right? So I'd like to introduce Suppy Wejpanich and Ron Baugh. Now, you've seen these guys before, right? If you guys have ever watched any type of automotive media, you've seen Suppy building stuff for Hoonigan. You've seen Ron has been on the podcast multiple times. Our favorite wheel designer on the planet. The man knows his stuff. But in the past month, something has happened. You know, when you're in the industry for a long time, you make a lot of friends in the industry. And those friends will every now and then come together with a project that you just can't say no to. And that's literally what happened in the past month. I'm going to break it down really quick. We all have one very good friend of ours, Michael Render, a.k.a. Killer Mike, rap artist, half of Run the Jewels, super car enthusiast, okay? He has had a Grand National that he's wanted to build for quite some time. Now, Ron was the facilitator of obtaining this vehicle. Now, over the past 4 or 5 years, the car was supposed to have been built, but for whatever the reason, it didn't get built. Now, fast forward to right now. Mike is nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. Grammy Awards are in 1 month. Mike wants to drive the Grand National to the Grammy Awards, except the Grand National at this point is not running because it has a wicked bad rod knock. So Ron called Suppy. Suppy said yes, he could do the entire car, rebuild it, new motor, transmission, everything. Then Ron called me and said, hey, Mike, do you think Hemmings would want to make a series out of this? To which I said, absolutely. So we called up the higher ups at Hemmings. They all agreed this was a wonderful project. This entire week, we have been down in Los Angeles playing with this car and kind of starting to get it ready for Killer Mike to take to the Grammys. And that's what this show's about. It's about how people kind of come together behind a project to make something work. In this case, it's going to be a hell of a month. So I don't know. How's everybody doing today?
I'm good. I mean, I can pretend it's been a long time since I've seen you guys. I saw Suppy like 2 hours ago. You, Mike, 12 hours ago. Like, you know, it's I mean, it's coming together. Like, it's amazing, like how quickly everything has moved and like fallen into place. And I'm thrilled to, you know, have each of you guys involved and you know, making this happen for Mike. It's an incredibly lofty proposition to build a car of this caliber and basically like replace every single part of the running gear, the suspension, the brakes, everything within 3 to 4 weeks, and have this thing, you know, not only just functional but looking good and reliable enough for Mike to roll up to the red carpet at the Grammys. Right. So it's this was my idea and I don't regret it. There's been a lot of sleepless nights lately, but now it's all on Suppy for the most part. So you're welcome, dude.
Yeah, so
thank you. Suppy, do me a favor. Tell people how first, Ron's been on the podcast a number of times. Mm-hmm. This is your first visit to the podcast. Tell people how you got in this industry, because now you create some of the craziest cars out there. You've created some beautiful, beautiful automobiles for car shows. You're kind of that guy. So how did you start in this, and how did you wind up where you are now?
It was like we're actually New Yorkers, so you know, we're from the same place. I started, like I don't want to show my age that badly, but it was like late 90s. I started drag racing Hondas, and then it kind of escalated there. I started building the front wheel drive race cars, and then that progressed into like a higher level. I started doing road race stuff with when Speed. When Speed Vision was around, remember that channel?
Sure.
Yeah, so I started doing the Speed Vision World Challenge, and then that progressed into more of road racing exotics with Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff like that. And then, that kind of all fell through in like 2008 when the economy was like not a good time to be racing exotic cars, So one thing went to another. I started I flip sides. Like the first half of my career was pretty much aftermarket, undo everything the factory did, right? Like
Right.
we were those guys who were like, man, the engineers don't know what they're talking about. We're kind of undo their stuff. And then I flipped sides and then I went to the OEM side where I was doing structural repairs for, Audis and Lamborghinis and Ferraris and BMWs and stuff like that. So it was a good learning curve, right? Because now you understand how the manufacturers do it, from their perspective. And somehow or another, I ended up in California and I met Ron, and we're kind of here. But I think, yeah, Ron and I worked at the same place, right? And like we've always been kicking this car back and forth. And like I said, we're finally here. We're finally doing it. So it's cool.
Okay, so Ron, go into the story about Killer Mike, because I met Ron. We all came together through kind of what we do for a living, right? Whether it's media or whatever the case is, right? So I met Ron a number of years ago. Ron introduced me to Mike. We actually filmed one of Mike's cars on the House of Muscle years ago. Ron brought Suppy in. Then he brought me back into this thing, and then this project came together. But give us a little history on Mike Render, the car guy, and how this project came together and why it's so important.
Sure. So basically, like, the origin story of me and Mike, like our relationship, like is actually pretty interesting because we're from the same neighborhood. Mike's 5 years older than me, but like if he was less than 5 years older than me, if he was 3 or 4 years older than me, like we probably would have gone to school together. We grew up in the same neighborhood, had almost the exact same I guess childhood experience. Like his dad was a cop, my grandfather was a cop. I grew up with my grandparents. We had all the same neighborhood heroes, and really a shared experience, a very unique experience growing up in what we call Collier Heights, is like a middle class black suburb of Atlanta. I mean, it's within the city limits, but it was like at the time when the community was built. Like my grandparents and everyone on our street were, they were professionals. Like my grandfather was retired as a major of the police department. Our next door neighbor were congressmen. We had like the dean of Spelman College. Like, it was a very it was middle class. I don't want to get it construed here, but it was a community of people that were involved in their community, and we just very proud community, and everyone knew each other, and it was a great community to grow up in. But Mike and I didn't meet until long after I left Atlanta. I came out here for school. I went to USC. I thought I was going to be an architect, but I really came to LA because of the car culture. And that's what like really allured me here. And like I had to figure out a way to get involved in the aftermarket. Like I worked for a wheel company as an intern while I was in school, and that just like became my career. Like I fell into that, and it was just a natural fit, and I loved it. And I've had so many incredible experiences and met so many like incredible builders and just cool people in the industry. And I've had a lot of celebrity clients, and that's always been kind of part of the wheel game is dealing with high profile clientele and really wealthy individuals as well. So like Mike and I became friends randomly on Instagram because he made a post. Like, I knew his music and I was always a fan of his music. Dating back to like his debut album, I think released in like 2003, something like that, right? And it was like, okay, hometown guy, like I can really I understand this music. It's like it's from the heart and soul of our community, and I identified with that. But like we never interacted and never met him until randomly one day on Instagram he posted something about it was a video on the freeway in Atlanta, and it was a video of like a Fairmont, like a 70s Fox body Fairmont, right?
Yeah.
Like the nerdiest car in the world, right? And it was a Fairmont wagon. But this thing had a blower sticking out of the hood, and it was like an older gentleman driving. There was 2 kids in the back seat, and I'll never forget this. Mike posted this video of this car riding beside him on the freeway, and he was like, "You might laugh, but the next Chip Foose is sitting in the back seat of that car." And I was like, "Oh, he knows who Chip Foose is." Like, Chip was super popular at the time. He was on TV and stuff, but like, you still had to be, like a car enthusiast to recognize that, and then to recognize that this weird station wagon with this supercharger sticking out of the hood is something cool And
Right.
like that family is super proud of it, right? So like I messaged him, I was like, "Oh, you're like really into cars," and like we started talking, and like I invited him out to the showroom for the company that I was working at the time, and we just bantered back and forth. And then like the next time that Run the Jewels was in town for a performance, he invited me and some friends, and so we met backstage, and just caught up, and like it was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like we had so many similar experiences. We knew all the same people, and like I said, we had the same like heroes and villains growing up in the neighborhood. And we became fast friends, and then I had the opportunity to build his 96 Impala.
Yeah.
So he bought this car with just 1,000 miles on it, less than 1,000 miles on it, and it was here in LA. And he asked if he could send it to me for storage until he could get it shipped to Atlanta. And I was just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then I thought about it, and I was like, no, this is an incredible opportunity. Like, what are you going to do with this car? How do you want to use it? He's like,
Sure.
I'm gonna drive the shit out of it. He was just like, I got a crazy deal on it, but like I want to enjoy this thing. And I was like,
And,
all right, if you're gonna drive it, then let me like modernize it, make it something that you'll enjoy driving, not a 25, 30-year-old
well,
car at
here's the
this
thing.
point.
For those that don't know, this is a 96 Impala
Yeah,
SS that it probably is one of the nicest ones in the United States, right? Most people have just kept the 1,200 miles on it and then just put it in a bunker somewhere and not touched
right.
it. Like I am going to beat the crap out of this thing
Yeah,
and just enjoy it. And I think that's why all of us look at him and we're like, okay, this
exactly.
is good. So there you go. So keep going, Ron, because
Yes.
that's exactly what happened.
So learning his use case, like anytime, like I've built, like overseeing, like I'm not a hands-on mechanic. I wrench on my own stuff because I can only get mad at myself, and if something goes wrong, then like the customer can only get so angry, and it won't cost me out of pocket. So anyway, like I wrench for fun, but I'm not a builder. But I've managed a lot of builds in my career, like SEMA builds, like hundreds of cars for SEMA, everything from just body kits to like full blown, like makeovers and restorations and stuff. So, knowing how he was going to use it, like I said, let me make some tweaks to it. Let me do suspension. Let me upgrade the brakes, exhaust, tinted windows, intake, just like bolt on stuff so
Sure.
that, if you do put miles on this car, like you'll enjoy the hell out of it. But if you ever decide like, hey, I want to sell this and return it to stock and sell it as a low mile stock car, you could do that.
Right.
So everything was bolt on. We didn't do any like permanent modifications or cutting on the car. And the car gained an identity. He calls it Vader. And like in Atlanta, like the car is known. Like it's so different from most of the 96 or 94 to 96 Impala builds like in the South. Most people do 22, 24, 26-inch wheels. We did 21s because they're load rated,
Yeah.
basically use tires for like a BMW or Bentley.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I don't have to worry about him bending wheels, blowing out tires, hitting potholes and stuff. So, it's that kind of stuff that he really appreciated about the car, and like he's still enjoying it to this day. And I think we presented that car to him, me and you, Mike.
Yeah.
I think that was December 2017. So
Yeah.
it's been some time, but he's still enjoying that car, and it's in that state. And maybe 2 years later, that's I knew he was looking for a Grand National. Like that's always been his favorite car. He rapped about it on his first album, and like that was kind of like the connection back then. Like
Sure.
to me, like I realized he was a legitimate car enthusiast when he rapped about a Grand National in like 2000 something. It wasn't like a current thing, but it showed he was an enthusiast and aficionado of
Yeah.
like that car and what it represented. So he had guys all over the country like offering him cars, and he would send me like the links and like, what do you think of this? And I was just like, again, what do you want to do with it? Like, do you want to drive it stock? Okay, then like, spend the money and buy the best car that you can, right?
Mhm.
But if that's not what you want, if you want to do like a pro touring makeover, like let me find a car that has solid bones.
Sure.
It might need some paint and body work. It might need,
Yeah.
like, some TLC. It might need interior, but like we need a straight car to build upon and to do suspension, exhaust. Like originally we were going to do a full chassis on the car, but like the plan for the car has changed several times over the last few years. But ultimately, Mike wanted a V8 powered like pro touring Grand National. It wasn't a purist build. He wasn't going to keep it V6 ever.
Right.
And we went through a couple different iterations. We had we had gotten a Hellcat motor from Mopar, and that kind of fell apart, and
that's a whole nother
when,
podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast. Yeah.
Let's just say that's when Soupy came into the picture, and he offered an LT4 in replacement of that. So the LT4 is the supercharged motor out of the C7 Z06, and that's when the project kind of changed directions. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, this actually makes more sense, and there's a lot more aftermarket support. So let's do it. And for whatever reason, like, the project didn't gain any steam for years, but recently I had to move the car, and I was just like, instead of moving this car from like one storage place to another, like, why don't we just get active on this build? Like,
Yeah.
and then I realized, oh my God, like, we're like 6 weeks out from the Grammys. And just like when we delivered his 96 Impala before an LA show of Run the
Right.
Jewels, I was like, I bet Mike would love to roll up to the Grammys in his favorite car, already made over, like, sitting right with all the, Pro
Yep.
Touring and performance upgrades already done. Like, it wouldn't be cool, and it wouldn't be anything special for him to roll up in his stock Grand National, even if it had wheels or whatever. Like, I was just like, like, it's ambitious, but to really make a splash and to like really make Mike's Grammy experience, I thought we should build this car in the 30 days or whatever we have for him to roll up to the red carpet, and that's where we're at.
So you called Soupy about this. Now, Soupy, when you heard about this, right? You heard about, okay, stock Grand National with a hashed motor, needs suspension, needs the transmission, needs everything. And then Ron goes, and by the way, you got less than a month to bang this thing out and make it great for Mike. What was your first reaction to this?
Well,
was it like
it kind of came in steps, right? Because Ron had to move the car. He's like, "Hey, can I bring it to you, and we'll kind of start the build?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Bring it by, bring the motor, bring in all that stuff, and we'll start the build." And then it was like, I think I want to say it was like a day later. He goes, "You think we could get it for the Grammys?" And I honestly, I'm disconnected from everything. And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. When's the Grammys?" And he's like, "February 4th." And I'm thinking to myself, man, it's like December 31st. I the math wasn't mathing in my head very well when I said yes. So I said yes, and then I realized, that's a big undertaking, but it's not something that is new to me and my team. So yeah, well, we have like experience doing stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be fun for sure.
Now, it's not slapped together, it's like all the right parts. It's a brand new crate motor from GM. It's not some junkyard takeout. It's like, we're throwing the best parts that are all compatible at it. And, like, that's the only reason why I even offered to Mike and enlisted Soupy, because I knew, A, Soupy's capable, and it's going to be done right. It's not going to be slapped together like some, early 2000s TV show with like a fish tank in the dashboard. And like,
we're not doing the fish tank.
Sorry, sorry. I hate to break it to you like this, but no fish tank. But yeah, I just knew that Soupy could put this together, that he's got the team that can handle this and do it right and make sure that it's done right the first time, and not go back and forth like, oh, it needs this, it needs that. It's like, I trust that Soupy knows what he's doing, and he's got a capable team. And, it's a tight timeline, but, for the most part, this stuff is bolt on. Obviously there's minimal fabrication involved, but like, it's mostly bolt on stuff. And it's like all systems that are integrated and meant to work together. So it's not like from this manufacturer, that manufacturer, like, this should, in theory, come together pretty easily.
Well, I think the fact that Mike really loves the Grand National, we were talking about it when we were shooting some video of it this past week. And, to guys that are, I mean, I'm the oldest one in this group, unfortunately, but it's true. Growing up with those cars, I don't think of those cars as 37 to 40-year-old cars. I just don't.
Classics, antiques.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
you're like, you still remember them new? Is that the problem?
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, when you talk about, we're doing a Grand National today, it would be the same thing as if we said in 1987, you know what, we're gonna build a 1950 Chevy. People be like, "You're gonna do what?" But for some reason, where a 1950 Chevy in 1987 felt super old, an 87 Grand National in 2024 doesn't feel that old.
Right.
Because, and I don't know why, I don't know whether it's because we still see them every now and then. You'll catch a glimpse of them going down the road. There are car shows. You still see them at drag races all the time. People are still running these things hard.
For sure.
You know? But the fact that somebody like Mike is like, listen, I love the body style. I love the shape. But in the same token, I want it modernized so that I can drive it every single day if I want to and just enjoy the hell out of it. I think that's one of the best things. And Suppy, credit to your team that this stuff doesn't scare you at all. You're just basically like, yeah, fine, we'll do it. That's what amazes me.
He literally said yes before he asked the date. That's what I was like, that's my guy.
I think that's how Ron got me. He cornered me. He told me he was just bringing the car. We're starting a project. I'm telling you, like a day later, he told me, yeah, we want to do it for the Grammys. So no, but in all honesty, it's like I went over the parts with Ron, and we carefully picked and choose the parts that will fit, and we know that work. So we're not. I mean, we're building a custom car, but we're not reinventing that wheel by any means. Right. So, with some good planning, I don't think it's going to be a big issue, right?
Yeah, I think
we have to mention
everything. Like we're documenting, just so everybody knows, we're filming a whole series, a 6-part series on Killer Mike's Grand National that you're going to see on Hemmings shortly after the Grammys air. And we're going to take you step by step through the entire build process. Mike's going to be in the series in a few episodes. You're going to see him enjoy this thing. So it's, don't think this is just like a quick and dirty build series. You're going to see this car,
Yeah.
And aesthetically, and I prepared Mike for this. Like, this isn't a total aesthetic transformation. Like, for the most part, it's going to look like a stock Grand National, except for the lowered stance, the cool wheels, which I'm responsible for. I still got to get with Mike and select the right wheel for the car. But it's not an easy undertaking to make a custom set of forged wheels in 30 days either. But like, I know my team is capable, but we have to give credit, and I have to thank Holly for supporting this project, because it is their host of parts and systems that are making this possible. So, I wouldn't have taken this on. I wouldn't have brought this to Suppy. I wouldn't have even mentioned it to Mike, this crazy time frame, if it weren't for everything kind of aligning and like basically having all the right parts and all the right systems and the right people involved. So, I was super stoked that that Hemmings would support this and document this build, because it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be stressful, but it's not impossible, and it's not like manufactured drama. Like, we're gonna have a good time doing this, but like, we do have a tight deadline, and we can't F around and like, waste any time here. So I'm super excited. And like I said, I would not have even fathomed taking this to anybody else. It's like, I know Suppy and how he works, and basically how these parts and systems should go together. So it's lofty, but it's not impossible.
No, I don't think so. And what I really like about the build is that, we're removing the turbo 6 out of this car, but you guys will see that Ron literally picked the perfect car to do this, because the motor is totally hash, right? It's got a wicked rod nocket. It's not a perfect car. It's got some rash here and there. As you'll see, the floors have been replaced. It is this is the perfect donor car for this type of build, right? As opposed to taking like a 1,500-mile perfect Grand National. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. But what I really like is that it's an evolution of GM performance, which I like, right? We're removing a turbocharged V6. We're putting in a supercharged V8, right? The Grand National back in the day was never that much of a handler, but it looked like it could. We're going to change that, right? Suppy's going to put the big brakes. He's going to do the transmission. We're upgrading the rear end, but we're, like you said, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making it roll better and faster and harder, so that Mike can get into it and just enjoy it. And Mike is not I'm not going to say Mike is a massive top speed guy. He's more like, let me just do burnouts.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, like the unique thing about like where Mike lives is, he's got great back roads. Like you've been to his house, and like when
Oh
we
yeah, it's
drove the
wonderful.
Impala, like
Yep.
he's got super cool twisty 2 lanes, and like I want him to go out there and enjoy that. And like he can stop in the middle of a straightaway, like out in farmland, like and do
Mhm.
burnouts till his heart's content. But then he can roll up to the studio, to
Yep.
dinner at whatever restaurant he wants, and
Mhm.
still like get that primo valet spot, because the car is going to command attention and respect, and it's classy. Like that's what I love about the Grand National, is that it's like it was like, well, I joke about this, but it's like the hood Bentley back in the day. Like it was like if Cadillacs were for cruising and taking it slow and vibing, like
Yeah.
Buicks were more like gentlemanly, like muscle cars, race cars. So like
Mm.
going back to like the Skylark, like the GSs back in the '70s, like those and Oldsmobiles were like more gentlemanly cruisers than the Chevrolets and Pontiacs of the era. And like the Grand National was like the perfect evolution of that. Like it was like it's regal, right? Like it's a Buick Regal. Like it's stately, but like when it stands right, and like it's got that the V8 rumble, like it's a force to be reckoned with. Like it's a really cool, intimidating car.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the other cool factors was when we were working on the car this week, um, Suppy's crew is pretty amazing. But I'm not gonna lie, they're young. For me, they're young. They're
Yeah.
young. They are young kids, and so seeing them kind of go over the Grand National as kids that are in their early to mid 20s, right,
Mhm.
was a
So
really interesting experience, because back in '87, this was the pinnacle of GM performance, right? It was a turboed
Mhm.
V6 when everybody was just getting back into high powered V8s, and then the Grand National came along with 9 pounds of boost and a Garrett spinner under the hood, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden,
Yeah.
that was big
Well,
news. But when the kids started looking at it, and they're going to kill me for referring to them as kids, it was very, very interesting to be like, huh. Like you could see the wheels turning in their heads. Like, why did they do it this way? Why did they do it
yeah.
that way?
Yeah. That
totally.
that has been the whole last couple of days. They're amazed. Like, oh, this is how this started out. Like they're looking at the fuel injections. Like, oh, this has six. I thought it was a throttle by injection, like a car. Like, no, no, no. This is like I was trying to explain to them. You got to understand too. When that car came out, none of them were alive, right? I mean, I came to that realization today when I looked over and said, "Where were you in '87?" They looked at me with a blank stare, like, wherever my dad was
Yeah.
at the moment. So, in any case, they're looking at it and they're going, "Man, so in 1987, this thing had a turbo." I'm like, "Yeah," and it was intercooled and it was port injected. Like I mean, this was basically like a
Yeah.
rocket ship. This
That
this
was
was this was the precursor. Like this thing has coil packs on. It's like now you see them on LSs, right? So like
Right.
this was like the grandfather. This is how
Yeah.
it started, and I
totally.
think they really enjoy that. They're looking at it like, wow, this is how it started, and this is like where it came from. So they're getting a good history lesson at the same time. I mean, so
Yeah. I
they're
love it.
enjoying it. So it's fun watching them go, wow, look at that. Oh, look at that. Like
Yeah.
I've never even thought about this, but that's how it started. Like that's the rudimentary of that part, right? So it's fun. It's kind of I've been stepping back a little bit and just having them tear into the car.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to watch them go, oh my gosh, look at
You
that.
sound like a proud parent.
It's like a curious kid, that's exactly what that is. It's funny. It's funny.
Yeah. And they're a good crew, man. They're super talented and hungry. Like, like they
Yeah.
like I can sense the excitement of getting to work on something different and cool, but like not
Yeah.
totally harebrained and like just for the cameras. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
so many builds these days are just for shock value, and it's just like we're gonna put, a Cummins in a Miata. And it's like,
Uh,
Right.
what? Like,
Right.
like this is something that actually makes sense, and like it has to perform. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's not Mike's not it's not a race car, but
Hmm.
it's got to be comfortable, reliable, and quick, and like like excite Mike when he drives
Oh,
it. That like that's I always say like the number one like priority for me is delivering Mike a car that he can enjoy without without worry, not like, oh man, I can't sit in traffic in this thing. Oh man, I'm not going to make it to, Birmingham or wherever,
Yeah, yeah.
like I'm going to get 5 miles per gallon. Like this thing should be
Well,
like, it should perform,
Yeah.
like 80% like a new ZL1 Camaro, for example. Like,
Yeah.
like it should be most of the way there as far as reliability and performance. So
yeah, I think that's our main goal, is just to make it reliable, right? Because I understand, like, Mike wants to get in it, swing a key, and go over where he wants to go, and not ever
that's
have
it.
to. There's take the corks out of the car, right?
That's it.
Right. Yeah.
But
Like
I like the fact that the crew is, you could see them starting to get excited about it. And as young kids, what I really like is that they are the next generation of hot rodders. And not that they're, like these are talented kids. They're not like just coming up. Like these guys, your crew knows what they're doing.
yeah,
And they are not afraid to dive in. They are not afraid to learn. They're not afraid to experiment. But the other thing that I really liked is that they take pride in what they're doing. And that is a big thing. I think so many times we'll see, kids like, to your point, Ron, with the shock value and stuff like that. These guys want to figure stuff out. They want to know how stuff works, and then they want to make it work better. And that's one of those things that you look at as kind of somebody who's been in the hobby for 25, 30 years. It's reassuring. It's one of those things to be like, you know what? My stuff is going to be okay. Like, I'm not that worried about finding kids now to work on my older stuff, because if they get this excited as what I saw in the last week about pulling this stuff apart and putting it back together and not being afraid to tear into it, that to me is just like, okay, like I'm breathing a little bit easier. And I'm like, I know at least four guys that I could go to now, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, well, I think it's coming along really good. We've got another 3 weeks to get this thing. And that, folks, that is not a lie. Grammys are on February what? February 4th?
February 4th.
February 4th. Okay.
But I mean, we need a few days of shakedown, It's like,
we
can't, like, the first trip can't be
across
the
No. We're not firing it up on the night of the 3rd. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So, but the cool part is, this is what I love about being in this hobby. This is one of those wonderful projects where, you get some of your best friends together. They call you for help. You can offer help. You can do stuff together. And I think if you're lucky enough to be in a position that the three of us are in, where we each get to work with our friends and do really cool stuff, and we've all figured out a way to make a career out of it, it's the craziest thing in the world, right? Where so many people out there on a Monday or a Friday or whatever the case is, they're going to go to work, they're going to sit on a train, they're going to go sit in a cubicle. I'm going to tell you flat out, all of us at some point have probably been in that situation, and all of us have made the conscious decision to change it. And work this week was working on a Buick Grand National for, a good friend of ours that's nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. Like this, that's what you call a good week at work.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, we just want to make that Grammy experience like the ultimate for Mike. It's just like, he's worked so hard, and like he's made what I consider to be one of the like greatest albums of our generation. And, hopefully he's recognized for that properly at the Grammys. But like, regardless of the awards, like just being there, being nominated, and being able to arrive in your dream car, like I put myself in like his shoes, and that gets me so excited. I know how thankful, how happy, and like just how complete that experience will be for him. And that's what I'm looking forward to more than anything. It's like any build, anything that I'm ever involved in, like the payoff is always seeing the owner's face, like like when they see their car or experience it for the first time, like in its like transformed state, like that is always the payoff. And I know Mike is going to be thrilled, and I'm just excited that we get to do this for him.
I totally agree. Well, Ron, Suppy, thank you for coming on. You guys are going to be back on the podcast again soon, because we are going to keep giving you updates on this thing.
Cool.
I've got to throw a big shout out to Hemmings, because
Absolutely.
Hemmings saw that this was a great idea, and they didn't even hesitate. They immediately jumped on board and just said, "You do what you have to do, Mike. Get these guys in. Let's build this car and let's document it and film it." So super, super proud of that. And otherwise, people just stay tuned. And stay tuned for the series that's going to come out on the Hemmings YouTube channel. Stay tuned for more from Suppy, from Ron, from myself. And guys, just to throw this out there, what is everybody's? Where can we find everybody on social so they can follow the build as well?
I'm pretty much just on Instagram and it's 777 style, and that's it. I mean,
okay.
I'm the same way. I'm primarily on Instagram. I'm Suppy SUPPY_MK4.
Okay, that's a super reference.
Yeah. Well, originally the page started because Suppy, Supra,
All right. And everybody,
more on that to come.
Yeah, more on that to come. And for me, it's just Mike_Musto on Instagram, same thing, or MD Musto on Facebook. I'm around, but yeah, stay tuned for updates on this. And if you guys want your ultimate classic or collectible, go to Hemmings.com. We've got 25, 30,000 of them online. We promise you'll find one. Guys, thank you again, and we'll see everybody on the next episode of the Hot Rod BBQ.
See you guys later.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ Podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ Podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.